Story number 1. The man who always returned the same item. I used to work at a small dollar store just off the main highway. One of those places that's tucked between a laundromat and an old payday loan office. Barely noticeable if you're not looking. The kind of store where the lights hum a little too loudly and the tiles on the floor are slightly off in color because management never bothered replacing the broken ones properly. I worked mostly the evening shifts, 4 to 10. It was quiet most days. You got the regulars, moms grabbing cheap snacks, teenagers giggling by the makeup aisle, and tired men buying discount batteries. You knew their routines, their faces. That's what made him stand out. He came in every Friday night, like clockwork, always around 8:15, always wore the same outfit, navy windbreaker, tan slacks, brown shoes with a noticeable scuff on the right toe. His hair was white, neatly combed, and he always walked slowly, as if measuring every step. He never bought anything. He only returned. Always the same item, a black-handled kitchen knife, still sealed in its plastic packaging. Receipt always folded perfectly in half. "I'd like to return this," he'd say. No expression, no eye contact, just those same 5 words spoken in a voice so steady it was almost unsettling. At first, I didn't think much of it. People return things all the time, even at a dollar store. Maybe he bought a few at once and was returning extras. But after the 3rd week, I started to feel off about it. "Didn't work," he said one night when I asked what was wrong with the knife. "It didn't work?" He blinked slowly. "No?" That was all he said. I gave him the refund, $1 plus tax. He walked out without another word. After that, I started keeping track. I wrote it down in a little notebook I kept by the register, just out of habit. Week after week. Same time, same man, same knife. By the 8th return, I mentioned it to my manager, Lisa. She laughed it off. "Maybe he's one of those old guys who just needs a reason to talk to someone," she said. "Let him have it. He's harmless." Maybe she was right, but it didn't feel harmless. One night, I decided to follow him. Not far, just out of the store. I clocked out right after him and slipped out the side door. He walked slowly, just like he did inside, heading down the sidewalk that curved behind the plaza. It was dark back there, just one flickering streetlight and the quiet buzz of power lines above. He turned left into a narrow alleyway, then disappeared behind the dumpster. I waited a few minutes, then I walked over. There was nothing, no sign of him, no sound of footsteps, just the faint smell of something metallic in the air. I told myself I imagined it. I didn't follow him again after that, but I kept noticing things. We had a drawer in the back room where we kept returned items to be processed. I started checking it every Saturday morning. His knives were always gone. No one knew where they went. Lisa said corporate probably had someone picking them up, but I checked with the morning staff. No one remembered removing them, and the return log didn't show anyone scanning them out. One Friday he came in later than usual. Almost 9:30. The store was dead quiet. Just me at the counter and that low electric hum from the ceiling lights. He walked up, placed the knife on the counter, and paused. I looked up at him. For a second, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Not fear, not sadness. Something like disappointment. "I'd like to return this." His voice cracked slightly, just a hair. "What didn't work?" I asked, more carefully this time. He looked at me. "Really looked. For the first time, the lights above us flickered. "I couldn't finish," he said. He left the store quickly after that. I stood there for a long time. I don't remember what I was thinking, just that something was wrong. That night, after closing, I checked the drawer again. Not only was the knife gone, but someone had placed a small piece of paper inside, folded once, like his receipts. There was no writing on it, just a faint, greasy fingerprint in the middle. I showed Lisa the next day. She told me I needed to stop obsessing, that it was probably just some kid messing around. I stopped mentioning it after that, but I didn't stop watching. 1 week, he didn't come. The next week, still nothing. I started feeling relief, then guilt for feeling it. Then, the third Friday, he came in, but this time he didn't bring a knife. He just stood by the shelf where we kept kitchenware. He picked up a knife, turned it over in his hands, then put it back. He did that with 3 different knives. Then he walked to the counter, empty-handed. I waited. He looked at me, then nodded slightly, and left. I watched him walk out, slower than usual. That was the last time I saw him. Weeks passed, then a month. Eventually, I stopped checking the return drawer, stopped looking over my shoulder at the back of the store, stopped wondering, until the police came. 2 officers showed up on a Tuesday morning. They asked for security footage from a few specific nights. They didn't say why, and Lisa didn't ask, but I did. An older man, one of them said, "White hair, windbreaker, ring any bells?" I felt my stomach turn. I told them about the returns, the knives, the routine. They looked at each other, then back at me. "You say he returned the same item every time?" "Yeah," I said, "always unopened." The taller officer nodded, slowly. "We found several knives," he said. "Same model, still in the packaging, all buried, in the woods behind his house." I didn't say anything. They never told us what else they found. But I started thinking back, wondering about the word he used. I couldn't finish. Finish what? I never saw him again. But sometimes when I'm alone in a quiet store under those humming lights, I find myself looking toward the door at 8:15, half expecting him to walk in with that same steady pace, place the knife on the counter, and ask for a refund. A few weeks ago, I was cleaning out a drawer beneath the counter and found an old return log. My handwriting, the notes I used to make, dates, times, all of them marked with a small X except one. The final entry. No X. Just a faint smear of something dark across the paper. I threw the notebook away, but that page still flashes in my head sometimes, especially when I hear that drawer creak open, even when I know no one's touched it. Story number 2. Aisle 9. Never stays clean. I used to do the night shift at a dollar store just outside of town. It was the kind of job you take when you're in between things. Quiet, simple, repetitive. I didn't mind it. Stock the shelves, mop the floors, take inventory. 6 p.m. to midnight, 5 days a week. We had 4 aisles, a tiny back room, 1 register, and buzzing overhead lights that flickered when the weather changed. Most of the regulars came in before 9, so the last few hours were usually silent. That's when I started to notice it. Aisle 9. Except we only had 4 aisles. The first time I heard it, I was sweeping. The store was empty, and the music system had already shut off for the night. I heard a voice come through the overhead speaker, low and distant, like it had bled in from another frequency. Aisle 9, cleanup required. I froze. The broom stopped mid-sweep. I looked up at the speaker. Then I was around the store, empty. I stood there for a while, listening. Nothing else came through. I figured it was a glitch, maybe something left over from the previous store that used the system. Ours was secondhand equipment. Everything else in the building, still it stuck with me. We didn't have an aisle 9. I didn't mention it to Lisa, my supervisor. She was always tired and short with words, and I didn't feel like sounding paranoid. But then it started happening more often. Always at night, always after 10 p.m. Same announcement, same calm voice. Cleanup required, aisle 9. Sometimes it would happen twice in one night. One evening, I walked to the back to check the speaker wiring. Everything looked normal. I even unplugged the system once, just to stop thinking about it. The voice still came through. It was always subtle, not scary, just wrong. But what really started getting to me wasn't the voice. It was the sticky floor. At first, I thought a kid must have spilled soda and no one told me. The tiles in the last aisle by the discount cleaning products started feeling tacky, like dry syrup. I'd mop it and the water would darken instantly, like it was pulling something up from beneath the tile. The weird part was, I cleaned that aisle every night, but by the next shift, the floor would be sticky again, always in the same spot, about 5 feet down, right side, just past the bleach bottles. One night I decided to clean it early, just to see if it stayed that way. I used extra solution, scrubbed harder, even dried it by hand with a towel. 15 minutes later, it was sticky again. No spill, no trace of anything on the shelves above. Just that same red-brown patch that seemed to bleed through the floor. I started avoiding that aisle, but sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of it in the convex mirror above the register, the one we used to keep an eye on the corners. I'd see movement in the mirror, a shadow, just passing by the end of the aisle. Every time I turned to look, it was gone. The cameras didn't help. I asked Lisa if I could check some security footage. Not the voice, just to see who was walking around late at night. She said sure, but warned me the system was old and glitchy. She wasn't kidding. The playback jumped, lagged, froze. But when I scrolled to around 10:20 p.m., I saw something. It was the aisle view. Static, dim, nothing moving. Then the screen glitched for a second. When the frame returned, there was someone standing halfway down the aisle, not walking, just standing. Too far to make out details, but the posture was strange, rigid, slightly turned toward the shelf. Then another glitch, and they were gone. I showed Lisa. She stared at it for a few seconds, then closed the file without a word. Said she'd have corporate look at the feed, but I knew she wouldn't. From then on, she always asked me to mop aisle 4 last. That was the aisle, right where the patch always came back. She never called it aisle 9, but I think she knew. The worst night was the last one I worked. It had been a slow shift. Rain tapped lightly against the front windows, and the store was empty except for a couple grabbing batteries. They left around 9:30. By 10:15, it was just me. I had my headphones in, half listening to a podcast while I swept. Then I heard it again, even with the headphones on. That same voice, clearer this time. Aisle 9, cleanup required, blood spill. I dropped the broom. It echoed in the empty store like it had been shouted. I stood there listening, not moving. Then I did something I hadn't done before. I walked back down aisle 4. No mop, no broom, just my phone light. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on your ears. As I stepped into the aisle, I noticed the air felt heavier, thick. The smell was sharp and metallic like old coins. The floor was darker again. That same patch. Bigger now wet, but not dry either. I crouched down. The tiles looked wrong, slightly warped, like something had bubbled beneath the surface. I reached out with 2 fingers and touched the edge. Sticky, but colder than it should have been. Then from behind me, just barely audible, I heard footsteps. Slow, 1 step at a time. But when I turned, the aisle was empty. I stood up and backed away. My pulse was in my ears. Then I saw something that still bothers me. A small, white card, halfway tucked behind a bottle of glass cleaner. I pulled it out. It was a price tag. Old, yellowed, curled at the corners. But the date printed at the top wasn't from our system. It said 2003. Our store opened in 2017. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I came in early and asked Lisa if she knew who worked here before us. She hesitated. There was another store. She said same layout, same shelves, but they shut it down. Why? She paused for a long time. There was an incident. A worker died during a night shift. Some kind of accident, slipped, hit his head. In aisle 4, she didn't answer. That was the last shift I ever did. I quit the following week. No explanation. Just walked away. Sometimes when I pass that strip mall, I still glance toward the store. It's still open. Same lights, same shelves, same layout. But I wonder if anyone ever fixed that floor, or if they still hear the speaker call out for aisle 9. Funny thing is, there's still only 4 aisles, but part of me thinks aisle 9 was never meant to be on the map. Some nights, I dream about that sticky patch, and sometimes, in the dream, I turn around fast enough to see someone standing just a few feet behind me, always the same height, always watching, always waiting for the cleanup. Story number 3. The backroom employee no one hired. I started working at the dollar store during the fall. Just a part-time gig to hold me over after college. Nothing fancy, just 4 aisles, a small freezer section, and a back room that always smelled faintly like old cardboard. The job was easy. Stock shelves, greet customers, sweep the floor at closing. We weren't ever really busy. Some days I'd go hours without anyone walking in. Most of my shift was spent in the back, opening boxes and organizing shelves. That's probably where it started. His name was Rick. At least that's what he said when I asked. I had just come in for the evening shift and headed to the back room to grab a box of Halloween decorations. He was already in there, cutting open a case of plastic pumpkins. He looked like any other guy. Slim build, maybe mid-40s, slightly hunched, dark uniform like the rest of us. I thought he was new. "Hey," I said, "you get a new hire?" He didn't look up, just nodded, almost like he didn't really hear me. "Cool," I said, trying to be friendly. "I'm Nate." He said nothing for a moment, then muttered, "Rick." That was it. No handshake, no eye contact. I didn't think much of it. Some people are just quiet. Maybe he didn't want to talk. Over the next couple of weeks, I'd see Rick now and then. Always in the back. Always working alone. He never came up to the register, never interacted with customers, and no one ever called him on the walkie, but boxes would be unpacked, shelves would be filled, and I just figured he was on the night crew or something. I asked Lisa, our manager, about him once. We were going through payroll hours when I brought it up casually. "Hey, what's Rick's last name?" She blinked. "Rick? Yeah. He's usually back here during my shift. Tall guy, kinda quiet." Lisa stared at me for a few seconds, like trying to read if I was joking. "There's no one named Rick on payroll." I laughed, thinking she was messing with me. "No, seriously. He was just in the back, like 2 nights ago, sorting the clearance stuff." She shook her head. "I don't have anyone on staff named Rick." "Are you sure you're not thinking of Ryan?" Ryan was a college kid who worked weekends. Totally different guy. I just said, "Yeah, maybe," and dropped it. But something didn't sit right. That night, I walked into the back room again. Slower this time. I looked around. Boxes stacked neatly. Shelves lined up. Tape gun left on the counter. Everything normal. Except there was a faint hum in the air, like a fridge running behind a wall. I checked the schedule the next day. Only 2 people were clocked in during my shifts that week. Me and Lisa. No sign of a third name. I decided to pay more attention. Whenever I saw Rick, he was doing something methodical. Stocking shelves, folding cardboard, writing something down on a small notepad he kept tucked into his back pocket. I never saw his face clearly. He always angled away from the light, like he preferred the shadows. One night, I stayed a bit after closing to help Lisa with the inventory. She had to leave early, so I finished alone. Around 11:45, I was counting units of canned soup when I heard a thud in the back. I called out, "Rick?" No answer. I walked to the back room. The lights were already off, but the motion sensor flickered on as I stepped in. The tape gun was on the floor. A box of paper towels had been torn open, like someone had rushed through it. There was no one there. I checked the lot outside. Empty. Just my car under the flickering lamplight. I locked up and went home, but that image of the tape gun on the floor stuck in my head all night. A few days later, I caught a glimpse of Rick from the front register. Just his shoulder as he moved behind the storage racks. I walked back again, determined to talk to him properly, but he wasn't there. The light flicked on, nothing but sealed boxes. And the odd thing, a notepad sitting on the metal shelf. I opened it. Each page had neat handwriting, lines of product names, inventory numbers, notes about restocking. Some pages looked decades old, yellowed at the edges, like they'd been handled over and over. The last page caught my eye. It just said, "Stop asking. He doesn't like to be seen." That was it. I put the notebook down and backed out of the room slowly. The next morning I came in early. Lisa was already there, sorting the new deliveries. I told her everything. The notepad, the back room, Rick. She stared at me quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You're not the first to say something like that." I waited. "There was a guy," she said finally. "Worked here before I managed this place, back when it first opened. Everyone called him Ricky." She rubbed her arms like the room had gotten colder. "He worked the back room, never liked the front. One night he just didn't come home, no sign of him. Cops never found anything. His locker was still full, apron hanging inside, name tag and everything." She didn't say much more after that, just told me not to work past midnight anymore. That night, I stayed late anyway. Not because I wanted to, but I had to know. I waited in the dark in front, pretending to count registers, just listening. The buzz of the lights overhead, the occasional creak of the ceiling tiles, ticking the wall clock. Then just past 11:40, I heard footsteps. deliberate, slow. From the back, I stood up, walked slowly to the back room. The light didn't come on right away, like the sensor was hesitating. Then, as it flickered on, I saw the silhouette of someone at the far end, not moving, just standing there, facing the corner. I didn't say anything. I backed away, quiet, careful, locked up, and left early. I never told Lisa about that night, but I never saw Rick again either. The boxes still get unpacked. The shelves still get stocked overnight, even when no one's scheduled. The back room still smells like cardboard and something faintly sour. And once in a while I find that notepad tucked between shipments, pages torn out, rewritten, dated back years before I ever worked there, always the same handwriting. I still work there. I don't go in the back room anymore. Not alone. Sometimes I think about that first night I saw him, the way he moved, like he'd been doing this job forever, like he never stopped, even after no one remembered hiring him, even after they stopped paying him. Maybe some people just never clock out, and maybe the back room remembers, whether we want it to or not. Story number 4. She never blinked at checkout. I used to work the closing shift at a dollar store on the edge of town, one of those stores where the air always feels a little too still and the floor tiles never stop squeaking no matter how many times you mop them. It wasn't a bad job. Boring, mostly. I'd sweep, restock, keep an eye on the register. We closed at 11, and by 9 p.m. it usually got so quiet you could hear the soft click of the clock above the entrance door. That's when she started coming in. It was always after 9, never earlier, never later than 10:30. She wore the same thing every time, an oversized gray sweater, long black skirt, flats with worn soles, no purse, just her hands folded neatly in front of her stomach. And she'd always buy one thing, a small pack of matches. We kept them near the register, and she never hesitated, walked straight up, placed them gently on the counter, and stared directly at me. She didn't smile, didn't speak, didn't blink. That's what got me first. I didn't even notice it right away. At first I thought she was just shy, maybe a little socially awkward. But the third time she came in, I started paying attention. She placed the matches on the counter and locked eyes with me. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and just a little too still, like a doll's. I waited for her to say something, but she didn't. I rang her up, gave her the change, and she walked out. No bag, no words. I watched her walk through the automatic doors. She didn't look back. The security footage confirmed it. I checked it a few days later during a slow shift. Curious. In the video, her movements looked rehearsed, mechanical. She walked to the register, stopped, placed the item, stared, waited, and left. Frame by frame, I watched her eyes. They didn't blink once. I joked about it to another coworker once, Sarah, who worked mornings. She buy anything else? She asked, frowning. Number just matches. She buys them in the morning too, she said. Always exact change, always quiet. That didn't make sense. She comes twice a day? Sarah nodded slowly. Sometimes more. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. I stopped joking after that. I started keeping track. She came on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, always in the same sweater. Always with that steady, quiet gaze. Same steps, same timing. She never walked fast, never acknowledged anyone else, just me. One Friday night, I tried to break the pattern. When she approached the register, I tried to talk. Cold night, I said, trying to keep it casual. She stared. No nod, no smile, no blink. I rang up the matches. My hands felt clumsy, like I was fumbling through muscle memory. She took the change without touching my hand, turned, and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the register beeping echoed in my head. The feeling of her eyes stayed with me, like they were still fixed on me in the dark. A few days later, I stayed late, after closing to help with a restock. Everyone else left around midnight. I was alone in the store, pushing a cart of cleaning supplies down aisle 3, when I heard the front doors slide open. They're not supposed to open after hours. I had locked them. I turned off my music and waited. No footsteps, no voices. Just the soft whir of the refrigeration unit and the tick of the clock. I stepped out into the main aisle. It was empty. The door was still closed, but something was sitting on the counter. A pack of matches. Same brand. Same place. I walked over, heart thudding in my ears. There was no receipt, no cash, just the matches. I checked the cameras the next morning. There was no footage between 12:07 and 12:09 a.m. The file just skipped. I told the manager. He chalked it up to a glitch. Old wiring. Happens all the time, he said, not even looking up from his clipboard. I stopped mentioning it to anyone after that, but I started watching more closely. She came back again the next Friday. And this time I didn't say anything. I just rang her up in silence, feeling my palms sweat against the register keys. She took the matches. Then right before leaving, she paused, turned her head slightly. Her eyes met mine. Still, no blink. But her lips parted, just a little, and she whispered something. Not loud enough to hear clearly. Just a few sounds. I leaned forward instinctively, but she was already walking out. I didn't sleep again that night. I started having dreams, or maybe they were memories, I couldn't tell, of working the register, of her standing there. Except in the dream, the store was dark, lights off, power dead. But I could still see her clearly, and I couldn't move, just stand behind the counter, frozen, as she stared, never blinking. One night I stayed after again, just to see. I turned off all the lights at closing and waited near the register, crouched, low. At 10:48, I heard the door slide open. No footsteps, then the register beeped. When I stood up, heart pounding, the counter was empty, except for a pack of matches and a single coin, an old dime, worn smooth on one side, like it had been handled for years. I didn't touch it. The next day, I found a sticky note on the employee whiteboard in the back. Different handwriting. It just said, "She's not buying them." I don't know who wrote it. The ink had smudged slightly, like someone with damp hands had placed it there. I asked Sarah, but she said she hadn't been in the back room that day. I've been thinking about it too much, trying to piece it together, trying to figure out where she goes after she leaves, why she never blinks, why the same item, why the same face. I even walked outside once to see where she went. I followed her, maybe half a block. She turned the corner past the alley beside the hardware store. When I turned it too, she was gone. No sound, no trace, just the wind rustling an old candy wrapper across the sidewalk. That was 2 weeks ago. She hasn't come in since. But sometimes, late at night, I think I hear the register beep. And when I check the counter the next morning, there's nothing there, except for that same old dime, just sitting on the edge, waiting. Story number 5. Voices from the walkie. I started working at the dollar store during the winter, just a part-time gig to help with rent. It wasn't bad. The building was small, and most of the customers were harmless. Parents with loud kids, bored teenagers, older folks looking for cheap wrapping paper. We used walkie-talkies to stay in touch. It was mostly for asking someone to bring change to the register or for backup during a restock. Just standard stuff. Each of us had our own channel. One walkie stayed in the back room, plugged in and charged at all times. It wasn't assigned to anyone. Just sat on the counter near the break fridge. The first time I noticed something strange was on a Thursday evening. I was in the cleaning aisle, stocking bottles of glass cleaner, when I heard it. A soft click of static from the walkie clipped to my belt. Then a voice, low, crackling. It said my name, just once. Nate. I stood up, heart jumping a little. The store was empty except for me and Jess, who was working the register. I pressed the call button. Yeah? No response. I walked to the front. Jess was leaning on the counter, scrolling through her phone. I asked if she called me. She shook her head. Haven't touched mine. I didn't push it. Figured maybe I misheard. But the next night, it happened again. I was in the back this time, counting inventory. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the old fridge and the ticking clock near the door. The unassigned walkie, the one on the counter, clicked on. Another voice, same tone, but this time, it didn't say my name. It whispered something I couldn't make out. Muffled, like it was being spoken through a cloth or from far away. I stood still, holding my breath. The green light on the walkie flashed, then silence. I asked Lisa, our manager, if anyone else had been using that walkie. She just gave me a tired look. Nah, that thing's busted, probably picking up radio interference. I nodded, but something felt off. It kept happening. Not every night, but often enough that I started to dread the static. It always came when the store was quiet, when I was alone in an aisle, or when the lights buzzed louder than usual. One night, the voice said something different. It said, "He's here." Just that. Clear as day. I froze. There was no one else scheduled besides me and Jess again. The store was locked. I walked up front, trying to act casual. "You see anyone come in?" I asked. Jess looked up, confused. "Nope. Why?" "No reason," I said. But I double-checked the cameras later that night. Nothing showed up. Just the two of us, walking in and out of frame. The timestamp matched the moment the voice had spoken. The camera pointed at the back hallway, glitched slightly, just for 2 seconds. Enough for me to notice, enough to make my skin crawl. After that, I started leaving the walkie in the office whenever I could. But even then, sometimes I'd hear it from across the store. That faint click followed by whispers I couldn't make out. One night I stayed after closing to clean the floors. Jess had already left. The store was locked. I had music playing quietly in one earbud while I mopped. Then the music cut out. The walkie on the belt buzzed my name again, but slower this time. Naiti. I didn't respond. I stood there, gripping the mop handle, listening to the static. Then, for the first time, the voice laughed. It wasn't loud, just a quiet, breathy chuckle, like someone was standing just behind me. I turned fast. No one was there. I left the store without finishing the floors. The next morning, I came in early and unplugged the unassigned walkie from the charger. Left it in the supply closet under some boxes. Thought maybe that would stop it. It didn't. That night, a different walkie picked it up. Story Number 6, the midnight restocker. The night shift at our dollar store was never busy. Most people didn't come in after 10, and by 11, it was just the soft hum of the lights and the occasional creak from the ceiling vents. I didn't mind it. Quiet suited me. I was usually the last one to leave. I'd lock up, make sure the registers were balanced, do a final sweep of the aisles. Sometimes I'd put on a podcast in one ear while restocking light shelves. I liked the stillness. But a couple of months ago, I started noticing something. I'd walk into an aisle and find it already done. Neatly stocked, items pulled forward, labels all facing out. It wasn't me. And I knew the others didn't bother with that kind of detail. At first, I figured Lisa might have come in early. She's the manager, always stressing about presentation. But I asked her once, casually, and she shook her head. Only time I'm here at night is inventory week, she said. That was the first hint that something wasn't quite right. It wasn't every aisle, just random ones. One night, it'd be toys. Next week, paper goods. Always neat, almost too neat, like someone had gone through and lined things up with a ruler. I didn't say anything at first. It felt weird, bringing it up without proof. But one Friday night, around midnight, I finished the last of my tasks early and decided to leave. As I passed aisle 2, I noticed the canned goods were completely rearranged, not just fronted, stacked in little pyramids, perfect triangles, all labels aligned, all cans facing outward. It wasn't just restocking. It was intentional, meticulous. I hadn't heard anyone come in, no footsteps, no carts. And the weirdest part, there were no open boxes, no tools, nothing that showed someone had just worked there. Just the display, sitting quietly like it had always been that way. That night, I turned off all the lights except the front ones and sat near the register, phone in hand, camera open. I waited. Around 12:23 a.m., I heard movement, software, almost like paper rustling. No footsteps, just the sound of items shifting. I stood up, walked slowly to the back of the store. No one was there, but aisle 4 had changed. The shelf of cleaning supplies was newly arranged. Bottles of bleach lined up perfectly. No fingerprints, no stray items out of place. I checked the back door, still locked. I went home with a knot in my stomach. The next few nights it got stranger. Sometimes I'd hear a soft tap, tap, tap like fingernails against plastic. Other times I'd find items grouped in strange patterns. Not just neat, symbolic shapes, a spiral made of crayons, a triangle of glue sticks, a perfect row of batteries, all negative ends pointing the same way. I stopped cleaning them up. Something about it felt watched. I'd look up at the mirrors in the corners of the aisles and swear I saw something move. Just a flicker, a shape, gone when I turned. One night, I stayed late on purpose. Left my phone camera recording on the shelf in aisle 3, facing the snack section. I let it run from midnight to 12:30, then reviewed it during my lunch the next day. Nothing moved on camera, but at 12:17, the lights in that aisle dimmed slightly for exactly 4 seconds. When they came back, 2 chip bags had changed position. I watched it twice. Same moment, same change. No one visible, just different. I showed it to Lisa. She told me to stop playing around with the cameras. Security footage is for theft, she said, not ghost stories. So I stopped showing people, but I kept watching. 2 weeks later, I came in one morning for an early shift. The store had opened half an hour ago. Customers were already coming in. Lisa looked tired, a little pale. "Who restocked?" "Last night," she asked me, not looking up from her clipboard. "Just me. Why?" She hesitated. "Someone opened 6 new boxes of toys and shelved everything. Didn't log it. Didn't leave any trash behind." I told her I didn't do it. She didn't press it, just nodded slowly and walked away. That day, I found something strange in the back. Tucked behind the mop sink was a cart. It wasn't ours. It was older, metal, rusted slightly on the wheels. On the bottom rack was an empty box cutter, the kind we don't use anymore. I asked everyone. No one had ever seen it before. That night, I took the batteries out of every walkie and left them on the breakroom table, just in case. Then, I waited again. Just after midnight, I heard movement. Not walking, not footsteps, more like a dragging sound. Slow, steady, like someone pulling something heavy across tile. I didn't go looking this time. I just stood behind the counter and waited. The sound stopped after a minute, then silence. No new mess, no open boxes, but the first aid shelf had been wiped clean, the bandages restocked, gauze packs aligned perfectly. I don't know how, I don't know by who. All I know is that it happens when I'm alone, when it's quiet, when the lights dim just slightly, like the building is holding its breath. I left a note once, just a sticky note. I wrote, "Who are you?" I stuck it on the crayon shelf, where the spiral had been. The next night, it was gone. In its place was a pack of crayons, arranged in a perfect circle. No wrapper, just color tips pointing outward like petals. I've stopped asking questions. Now, I just work. I keep the aisles clean. I stock quietly. I don't stay past midnight anymore, and I don't touch the patterns, but sometimes early in the morning, I find the card again. Not every day. Bust. No. Parked Silas's bud. Silas is standing silently between the aisles, facing nowhere in particular. Like someone's still using it, like someone never clocked out. Story number 7. The locker that was never opened. When I started working at the dollar store, I didn't think much about the break room. It was small, just a scuffed table, 2 chairs, a fridge that buzzed too loudly, and a row of 5 gray metal lockers lined against the wall. Nothing fancy. Each locker had a number, no names. We were told to claim one, bring our own lock, and keep it tidy. I picked number 4. Most of us used ours for jackets, phones, maybe a snack or 2, but locker number 5, the one at the end, had no lock. It was taped shut with 2 strips of old masking tape, the kind that's yellowed around the edges. Nobody talked about it. At first, I assumed it belonged to someone who had quit. Maybe the tape was just to keep it shut until it got cleared out. But weeks passed, new people came and went. The rest of us rotated shifts. Locker 5 stayed untouched, still taped, still shut. Sometimes I'd catch someone glancing at it when they thought no one was looking. Quick glances, like it was normal, but not really. Like they were remembering something they didn't want to think about. One day, on my break, I asked Sarah about it. She was the kind of person who knew things, who'd been there long enough to see people come and go. I nodded toward the locker. "What's the deal with that one?" She didn't look at it, just stirred her coffee and said, "Don't mess with it." That was it. Didn't explain, didn't joke, just those 4 words, spoken quiet but serious. After that, I stopped asking, but I kept noticing things, like how it was always cold around that end of the break room. Not freezing, just enough to feel the hairs on your arms rise, or how the tape never peeled. Even after months, it stayed in place, like it had been fused to the metal. One night, I stayed late after a shipment arrived. I was organizing stock, trying to make things neat for the morning crew. The store was quiet, lights dimmed, back room silent. I went to grab my jacket from the break room. As I walked in, I heard a soft, metallic click, like a latch moving. I turned toward the lockers. The tape on locker 5 was curling at the edge, just slightly, like it had been peeled back and pressed down again. I froze. No one else was in the store. I checked the office. Empty. Doors locked. Still, I stared at that locker for a long time before grabbing my stuff and leaving. After that night, it started to bother me more. I began noticing how the air near locker 5 always smelled faintly like dust and something else, something sour, like rusted pennies and wet cardboard. I told myself I was imagining it, overthinking. But one afternoon, I came in for a shift and found the tape was gone. No one mentioned it. The locker door was still closed, but bare now. Just the handle. No lock. Nothing holding it shut. I stood in front of it longer than I should have. Something about it felt wrong, like the door wasn't just closed, it was holding something in. I didn't open it. Not then. A week passed, then 2. Strange things started happening. I found an old name tag on the floor behind the mop sink. Bent, scratched. The name had been half scrubbed off, but you could still read most of it, Darren. Kurt. We didn't have a Darren. I asked Lisa, our manager. She looked confused for a second, then shrugged. Maybe before my time, she said, taking the tag and tossing it in the trash. But later that night, I found the same tag again, back behind the mop sink. Same bend, same scratch, same name. I didn't mention it again. Then there were the photos, small Polaroids tucked behind boxes in the back room, 4 of them. Each one showed someone standing in the store. None of them looked familiar. The backgrounds were dark, like the photos had been taken after hours. The people were all turned slightly away, blurry, as if they hadn't known they were being photographed. On the back of each photo, someone had written a number. Not dates, not prices, just single digits, 1 through 4. I looked at the lockers the next morning. Mine was number 4. That evening, I opened my locker and found the 5th photo. It was a picture of me, from behind, standing in aisle 2. My head slightly turned. The angle matched one of the security camera spots, except the store had no Polaroid cameras, and no one had access to the security feed but Lisa. I didn't say a word, but that night, after everyone had left, I went into the break room alone. The air was cold. Still. Locker 5 stood there, quiet, waiting. I stared at the handle for a long time. Then, I pulled it open. Inside, it was dark. No shelves, just space. A crumpled apron hung from a hook, stained and wrinkled like it hadn't been touched in years. A name tag pinned to it. Darren. Below it, neatly stacked. With the same 4 Polaroids I'd found. Except now, there were 5. The 5th one was still of me. Only this time I was looking directly at the camera. Eyes open. No expression. I hadn't taken that photo. I hadn't posed for it. I stared at it until my chest felt tight. Then I closed the locker and backed out slowly. I didn't tell anyone. I switched lockers the next day. Left number 4 empty. Sarah didn't ask why. She just looked at me, then at locker 5, and nodded slightly, like she understood. I still work there, but I don't take breaks in the back anymore, and I never open locker 5. Not again. Because every now and then, I find things in my new locker. A name tag I didn't put there. An old receipt from a shift I never worked. And once, folded carefully, a piece of yellowing masking tape. Still sticky, still warm. If that story gave you chills, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more quiet, unsettling horror just like this. And hey, if you've ever experienced something strange at work or in a place that just didn't feel right, share your story in the comments below. I'd love to read them. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos appearing on your screen right now. Each one more disturbing than the last. Thanks for watching.